Fans are losing their minds right now because Johnny Depp just dropped a revelation that changes everything we thought we knew about his future. The man who brought Jack Sparrow to life and made us believe in pure cinematic magic has spoken in a way that hits different this time. No filters, no scripts, just honest words that cut straight through years of silence. If you have followed his journey even a little, you already feel that shift in the air. This is not another rumor. This is the moment everything realigns and the Pirates world suddenly feels alive again. Stick around, because what he revealed next will leave you speechless at the moment those words from Jerry Bruckheimer landed fans across the world. Felt the ground shift under their feet, because for years the question of whether Johnny Depp would ever step back onto the Black Pearl had hung in the air like unfinished business, and now the producer who has steered every single Pirates of the Caribbean film from the very beginning said out loud, if it is up to me, he will be in it, and that single sentence carried more weight than 1,000 carefully worded studio statements ever could, because Bruckheimer does not speak lightly about this franchise. He has lived it, watched the character grow from an eccentric supporting idea into one of the most beloved figures in modern cinema, and when he confirms that the door remains wide open for Johnny Depp to return as Jack Sparrow, the entire conversation changes overnight. People who had quietly accepted that the golden age of those films might stay locked in the past suddenly found themselves refreshing every entertainment feed, waiting for the next update, and the reaction was pure unfiltered emotion, not manufactured hype, but the kind of genuine excitement that only comes when something real finally moves. After years of stillness, you can still feel the echoes of that Comic-Con appearance only weeks earlier, when Johnny Depp walked the streets of San Diego dressed as Ebenezer Scrooge for the trailer of his upcoming film and looked straight into camera to say, "It is good to be back." Those 4 words landed differently for every fan who had followed his path through the quieter years of independent projects and music and careful steps forward, because they were not promotional slogans. They felt like a personal acknowledgement that the distance between him and the audience had never really closed. And now, with the Pirates update arriving so soon after that moment, the 2 pieces of news sit side by side and create a picture of an artist who is carefully choosing the work that still lights him up from the inside. The way Jack Sparrow always did the character was never just a role for him. It was a living, breathing invention that he shaped with every tilt of the head, every unexpected gesture, every quiet undercurrent of melancholy beneath the swagger and fans who grew up watching those films. Remember the first time they saw him weave through a crowded tavern or talk to his compass as if it held the only truth that mattered. Those memories do not fade, and that is why the possibility of one more voyage feels so large right now. It is not about forcing a perfect comeback narrative. It is about the simple, honest chance that the same creative spark that made Jack Sparrow unforgettable might return in some form if the script is right, and that is the key detail Bruckheimer has repeated more than once. The decision will rest on the page, because Johnny Depp has always treated the material with care. He has never been the kind of performer who shows up for a paycheck and phones it in. The roles that stay with people are the ones he has poured himself into, and the fans who have stayed loyal through every chapter understand that better than anyone. They have watched him take on strange, beautiful characters that other actors might have avoided, and they have seen the quiet dedication behind the public image. So when news like this surfaces, the response is not blind celebration. It is a collective holding of breath mixed with hope, because everyone knows how rare it is for a character this iconic to get another chance that feels authentic. The conversation's happening right now in comment sections, and fan communities are filled with people sharing their favorite Jack Sparrow moments, the way the character could be ridiculous and deeply human in the same breath, the way he somehow made every impossible escape look like pure improvisation, and the way those films brought entire families into the same theater year after year. That shared experience is what makes the latest development feel personal. It is not just industry news. It is the reopening of a door that many had quietly closed in their own minds, and the timing could not be more interesting, because Johnny Depp has already been stepping back into larger spaces with the Ebenezer Project, a dark reimagining of the classic Christmas tale that lets him disappear completely into another eccentric soul. The trailer that dropped at Comic-Con showed the same commitment to transformation that has always marked his best work. The makeup, the posture, the quiet intensity, and the meta line about being back only underlined what fans already felt, that the connection had never been broken. It had simply been waiting for the right moment to speak again. Now the Pirates conversation sits alongside that return, and suddenly the map of the next few years looks different. The possibility of seeing Jack Sparrow sail again is no longer a distant wish. It is a living option that depends on the writing and the willingness of everyone involved to protect what made the character special in the first place. And that is exactly the kind of measured, careful approach that feels true to the man himself. He has never chased trends or forced himself into roles that did not call to him. So the fact that the producer is still Holding space for him says as much about mutual respect as it does about commercial potential fans who have followed every interview and every quiet update over the years, recognize the difference between empty promises and genuine possibility, and this feels like the latter. It is grounded in actual conversations that have already taken place and in a producer who has been consistent about wanting the original energy of the franchise to remain intact. Of course, nothing is locked yet, and that honesty is part of what makes the moment believable. No one is claiming the film is already shooting or that the script is finished. The reality is still being written scene by scene, and that uncertainty is what keeps the excitement alive instead of turning it into something overproduced. The fans who are losing their minds right now are not reacting to a finished product. They are reacting to the sudden reappearance of hope after a long stretch of silence, and that hope is rooted in the same qualities that made Johnny Depp's performance as Jack Sparrow unforgettable. In the first place, the willingness to take risks, the refusal to play it safe, and the deep understanding that the best characters are the ones who feel a little broken and a little magical at the same time. Those same qualities are visible in the way he has approached his recent work, choosing projects that let him explore rather than simply appear. And that consistency is why the latest revelation carries so much weight. It is not a sudden reversal. It is the natural continuation of a path that has always been more about the work than the noise surrounding it. The people who have stayed with him through every chapter know that the connection was never dependent on constant visibility. It was built on the honesty of the performances and the strange, beautiful worlds he helped create. So when a producer as central as Jerry Bruckheimer says the door is open, the response is not surprise. It is recognition that the story might still have another chapter worth telling, and that is what has the fans talking late into the night, trading old favorite scenes and imagining what a new adventure could look like if the writing finds the right balance between the familiar and the unexpected. The truth is that Jack Sparrow was never a character who belonged only to the screen. He became part of the shared language of a generation, a shorthand for freedom, for mischief, for the quiet courage of choosing your own course even when the odds look impossible. And that is why the latest update feels larger than a single film announcement. It touches every person who ever walked out of a theater smiling because of that character and who still carries a little of that feeling whenever the theme music starts playing somewhere in the background. The revelation does not rewrite the past. It simply opens a window onto the future and lets the light back in. And for fans who have waited through the quieter years, the light is enough to keep the conversation going for a long time, yet the careful way the news has been shared also feels right. There are no sweeping guarantees, only the steady confirmation that the people who care most about the franchise still see Johnny Depp as part of its heart, and that respect is something the audience can feel because it mirrors their own. The same audience that has always responded most strongly to the moments when the character dropped the swagger, then showed the softer, more uncertain side underneath those quieter beats, are the ones that made Jack Sparrow feel real, and they are the same qualities that fans hope will return if the next film finds its way onto the screen. The current wave of excitement is therefore not about demanding a perfect outcome. It is about celebrating the simple fact that the possibility still exists and that the man who created the character is still being invited to shape whatever comes next. That invitation alone is enough to change the atmosphere around the entire franchise and to remind everyone why those films mattered in the first place. They were never just about treasure maps and sea battles. They were about a character who somehow made the impossible look effortless and the lonely look adventurous. And that combination is rare enough that any chance of seeing it again deserves the kind of honest, emotional response that is happening right now across every platform, where fans gather. The latest revelation has given them permission to hope again without apology. And that permission is what makes the moment feel so alive. It is not forced praise or manufactured drama. It is the natural reaction of people who still care deeply about a character and the artist who brought him to life, and who now see a clear path that might lead back to the open sea if the words on the page are true enough to call him home. And that is the quiet truth at the center of everything unfolding right now. The chance that the same creative instinct that once turned a pirate into something far more human might still have room to breathe again if the material feels honest enough, and that possibility alone has been enough to keep fans talking long after the first headlines faded, because the connection was never only about the big set pieces or the clever one-liners. It was about the way Johnny Depp let the character exist in the spaces between the noise, the small glances, the half-finished thoughts, the way Jack Sparrow could look completely lost and still somehow know exactly where he was going. Those details are what people still carry with them years later, and they are the reason the latest confirmation from Jerry Bruckheimer lands with such weight. It is not a sudden announcement of a finished film or a locked start date. It is simply the steady acknowledgement that the door is never closed and that the people closest to the franchise still see the original energy as worth protecting. That kind of measured language feels rare in an industry that often prefers bold promises, and that rarity is part of what makes the moment feel believable. Fans who have followed every careful step of Johnny Depp's recent work already understand the difference between empty speculation and something grounded in actual conversations, the same conversations that have been happening quietly for some time now about whether the next chapter could still hold space for the character who defined the entire series. And the fact that those talks are still alive is what has people returning to old favorite scenes and noticing new layers they might have missed the first time around, the way the performance always balanced pure chaos with an undercurrent of loneliness, the way the character could make a room full of people laugh and still leave them wondering what he was. Protecting underneath the swagger, that mixture is what made Jack Sparrow feel like more than a comic invention, and it is the same mixture that fans hope will still be present if the writing ever finds its way to the right place. The current wave of conversation is therefore less about demanding an immediate return and more about recognizing that the possibility itself changes the atmosphere around the franchise. It turns what had started to feel like closed history into something still in motion. And that shift is enough to spark the kind of genuine excitement that cannot be manufactured, the same excitement that once filled theaters when the first film arrived and no one quite knew what to expect from a pirate who talked to his compass and treated every crisis as an opportunity for improvisation. Those early reactions were never about perfection. They were about discovery, and the latest news has somehow brought a little of that same feeling back into the present, because for the first time in a long while, the future of the character does not feel completely settled. It feels open, and that openness is what has fans lingering over every new detail, no matter how small. The quiet confirmation that the producer still wants the original spark involved, the reminder that the decision will always rest on the quality of the page, the understanding that Johnny Depp has never been the kind of performer who steps into a role simply because it is expected of him. All of those pieces fit together into a picture that feels consistent with the way he has always approached the work, choosing the projects that still hold some mystery for him, rather than the ones that simply look safe from the outside. And that consistency is why the latest revelation carries an emotional weight that goes beyond ordinary entertainment news. It touches the people who grew up with the films and who still feel a small lift whenever the familiar theme music appears somewhere unexpected. It reaches the ones who quoted the dialogue in schoolyards and the ones who later introduced the same films to their own children. And in every case, the reaction is rooted in the same simple recognition that the character still matters, the careful timing of the news also feels important, arriving so close after the comic con appearance where Johnny Depp stood in full character as Ebenezer Scrooge and spoke the line about being back. Those two moments sit beside each other now and create a larger sense of movement. The return to a major studio project on one side and the open invitation back into the franchise that made him a global figure on the other. Neither one cancels the other. They simply exist in the same stretch of time, and together they suggest an artist who is still choosing his steps with intention, rather than rushing to reclaim any particular image. That intention is something fans have learned to trust over the years, because it has always been visible in the work itself, the willingness to disappear into strange and sometimes difficult characters, the refusal to repeat the same performance just because it once worked. The quiet dedication that shows up in the smallest physical details. Those qualities are the reason the possibility of another Jack Sparrow chapter still feels worth caring about. It is not nostalgia for its own sake. It is the hope that the same creative curiosity that once shaped the character might still have something new to say if the circumstances are right. And that hope is what keeps the conversations going long after the first wave of headlines has passed. People are not simply repeating the same excited phrases. They are revisiting specific moments, the way the character could turn a simple conversation into something unexpectedly tender, the way he could look completely unprepared and still outthink everyone around him, the way that performance somehow made every impossible situation feel like it might still turn out all right. Those memories are personal, and they are the real reason the latest update has landed so deeply. It is not about claiming that everything will be perfect. It is about acknowledging that the door remains open and that the people who care most about the franchise are still willing to leave space for the original heart of it. That willingness is rare enough to deserve the honest emotional response it is receiving right now across every corner of the fan community. The discussions are full of people sharing the first time they saw the character appear on screen, the way the entire theater seemed to lean forward a little, and the way that feeling never quite left them even after the credits rolled. Those shared recollections are what give the current moment its texture. It is not a manufactured campaign. It is a collective recognition that Something important might still have room to grow, and that recognition is enough to keep the energy alive without needing any exaggerated claims. The reality remains simple and grounded. The script is still being shaped, the conversations are ongoing, and the final decision will rest on whether the material feels true enough to the spirit that made the character matter in the first place. That honesty is what separates this update from the endless cycle of rumors that have surrounded the franchise for years. It is rooted in the words of the producer who has been there from the beginning and who continues to speak about the project with the same careful respect that the fans themselves bring to the conversation. And that shared respect is perhaps the most meaningful part of the entire development. It shows that the connection between the artist, the character, and the audience was never as fragile as some of the quieter years might have suggested. It was simply waiting for the right conditions to speak again, and now that those conditions appear to be forming, the response has been exactly what anyone who understands the history would. I expect pure unforced emotion mixed with the quiet patience of people who have already waited a long time and who are willing to wait a little longer if it means the next chapter can arrive with the same integrity as the ones that came before. That patience is part of what makes the fan. Community around this particular story feel different from the usual noise of entertainment discourse. There is a willingness to let the process unfold without demanding instant answers, and that willingness is itself a reflection of the same qualities that once made Jack Sparrow so compelling: the ability to move through uncertainty without losing the sense of wonder, the readiness to follow a strange path simply because it still feels alive, and the understanding that the best moments are often the ones that cannot be fully planned. Those same instincts are visible in the way Johnny Depp has continued to work through recent years, choosing roles that still hold some risk and some mystery rather than settling for safer ground. And that consistency is why the latest news feels less like a sudden reversal and more like a natural continuation of a longer story, the story of an artist who has always treated the work as something larger than any single headline, and of an audience that has stayed connected for the same reason the current excitement is there for. Not about claiming that everything has already changed. It is about recognizing that the map itself has shifted just enough to make new routes possible, and that shift is what has people returning to the films with fresh eyes, noticing details they might have overlooked the first dozen times. The way the character could make silence feel as important as any line of dialogue, the way the physical performance always seemed to contain more information than the words themselves, the way the entire world of the franchise somehow felt more alive whenever he was on screen. Those observations are not new, but they land differently now that the future of the character no longer feels completely closed. They become part of a living conversation rather than a closed chapter, and that is the real effect of the latest revelation. It has turned memory back into possibility and given the fans permission to care out loud again without apology. The conversations that follow are full of the same mixture of humor and sincerity that the character himself always carried people joking about their favorite chaotic moments, while also admitting how much the quieter ones still mean to them, sharing the ways the films became part of family traditions or late-night rewatches or the soundtrack of particular seasons in their lives. Those personal connections are what give the moment its real weight. It is not about industry strategy or box office projections. It is about the simple fact that a character created with such care still lives in the imagination of so many people, and that the artist who shaped him is still being invited to return if the conditions feel right. That invitation alone is enough to change the temperature of the entire conversation and to remind everyone why the original films managed to cross so many different kinds of audiences in the first place. They offered something that felt both larger than life and strangely intimate at the same time, and that combination is rare enough that any chance of seeing it again deserves the kind of careful, hopeful attention it is receiving right now. The latest update does not promise that the voyage will definitely happen. It simply confirms that the compass is still pointing in a direction that many people still care about, and that confirmation is what keeps the energy moving forward without needing any forced drama or exaggerated claims. The truth remains grounded. The work continues, the conversations continue, and the fans continue to show up with the same steady loyalty that has always defined their relationship to the story. And in the middle of all that quiet persistence, the possibility of one more adventure still feels alive enough to matter. If this latest chapter in Johnny Depp's story stirred something in you the same way it has for so many others, then let the conversation keep going. Drop a comment and share the one Jack Sparrow moment that still lives rent-free in your head, or simply say how the news landed for you. Subscribe if you want to stay close to every honest update that follows, and hit the bell so nothing slips past, because the story is still unfolding, and the best part is hearing what it means to the people who
have been here the whole time. Your voice is part of this now, so make it count.